Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, BJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We will release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to subscribe, share on social media, and bring others along with you on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. Kevin, today is episode 13.
Episode 13.
We have titled this, Don't Do This. And it's a little different than what we normally would have done. Are you excited?
Oh, I am so excited.
We are very excited. So this is different little format. Kevin's going to run through three different things, and we're going to kind of banter in between these two. So that's going to be fun. Kevin, what's the first thing we're going to talk about?
So here's that. So we kind of run these in series, and we're just coming out of this whole series on rhythms. And so this for us, this is our fifth Wednesday special.
Yes.
So when there's a fifth Wednesday of the month, we're going to do something that's a little out of the ordinary. So this one's titled, Don't Do This.
I like that.
So I want to give you three things that leaders don't do that are a little out of the ordinary. And we'll talk about like leaders don't blame, leaders don't show up late. And those are good things, but you know that. Like, you know that.
Yeah.
And so I want to give you kind of three maybe unique things that leaders don't do. So here's the first one. And if I was smarter, these would be like super catchy phrases. And I don't have super catchy phrases, but I think these are important. So first thing that leaders don't do. Leaders don't say, "That's over my head," out of pride. Leaders don't say, "That's over my head," out of pride. And let me give an example of this to start off. So a couple years ago, I'm at a conference, speaker gets up there, and the speakers at this conference have been like super practical, super helpful, like good handles on leadership, obvious, funny, dynamic, great stories and illustrations. And then this next speaker got up and they were like a professor, like everyone else is wearing jeans and cool jacket or something like that. This dude gets up there, he's got a suit on, and you can tell he's an academic. And he gets up there, and as he's going through the thing, like, I am trying as hard as I possibly can to stay engaged. But just to be blunt, like, he is smarter than I am. And like every probably sixth or seventh word, legit, I didn't know what it meant. And I'm just trying to use context clues and track with it and go through it. And he gets done, and I've got like maybe a quarter of a page of notes. And what I had written down, I was like, there's something here. And I looked at the person next to me, and they are sound asleep. Like they are out. And so it's break. They kind of wake up. There's stuff going along, and they're like, that dude was so boring. And I couldn't understand a thing that he said. But it was the way they said it. And like they said it in a way like I couldn't understand a thing that they said. And because of that, they're terrible. And it was like I just kind of had this completely different response within there of just going, man, he's smarter than me. And I need to figure out what he said. I need to figure out what he knows that I don't know. And I experienced this in a different way. I had the opportunity to go down with a group of other pastors to visit with the top leadership team at Southeastern University who were just doing some amazing things. And it was like we got down there and they were using terminology and things like that was over my head. Mm-hmm. And it gave me this sense of like, man, they are playing the leadership game at a level that is higher than I am. And I want to figure out what that is. I want to figure out what that is. And so how I can do what they're doing and understand what they understand. And so I say that to bring back to the main, leaders don't say that's over my head out of a sense of pride at all. They're willing to say, I don't know. They're willing to admit what they're ignorant of and what they don't understand. But if something's over their head, they don't automatically think that it's stupid. They don't automatically think that it's dumb within that. And that just doesn't always seem to be the case. And this is the really weird thing, is we pride ourselves on being, I don't know what the proper term, fluent or competent in culture. Like if someone references a TV show, or a new terminology or a movie or a new band or something like that, like we're embarrassed if we don't know what it is. We pride ourselves today in the current atmosphere on being fluent on pop culture and what's going on. But when it comes to like higher level learning, stuff like that, it's almost like if someone speaks above us, we act like they're the idiot.
Yeah.
And man, like on the other hand, let's just say like, man, I strive to speak in a way that anyone can understand.
Yeah.
I can get up, I preach every week. I could get up on Sunday, I could go throw out theological terms left and right. I don't want to do that. I want to speak in a way that everyone can understand. But if someone is speaking over my head, I don't view them as dumb.
Yeah.
I view them as more intelligent than myself.
Yeah.
And so I just don't ever want to be in that spot where I go, hey, I mean, my goodness, that's over my head.
Yeah.
You're the moron.
Yeah. That's, we don't say that's over my head as leaders. I like the fact that you said we can say I don't know. I think the powerful thing of saying I don't know is there's not a period after that.
Yeah.
There's a
Oh, that's good.
There's a comma which says, hey, I don't know this, but let's go figure it out.
Let's figure it out.
You know what I mean? Like there's ability to learn. You mentioned this week where we were talking about someone, we're doing the 21 days of prayer and fasting right now.
Mm-hmm.
And someone had put in the comments that, hey, man, I wish I could learn and study the Bible and understand it like Kevin does. And you even mentioned on Sundays is that, hey, it didn't just happen.
Yeah.
You had to actually look at this stuff. And I found out for myself when I had to do this in a way I had, when you know you have to be a leader and you have to teach something, you do things differently.
Yep.
You don't, and I love the fact that we didn't have a comma after that. Hey, I don't know, but we're going to figure this thing out together, or I'm just going to figure it out on my own and then help you figure it out later.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
It's like one of those things, I don't know what it is, because for some reason when it comes to leadership and intelligence and wisdom on how the world works, for some reason, there's not this like competitive drive that is beneficial in other arenas of life. Like, go back to kids and like, oh my goodness, field day. I just talk about track and field, but I was too slow to run in track and field. But like, you go back to like just field day and someone beats you, and you'd be like, I want to be faster than them. Like, if someone beats you in a race, you never got done with a race, and were like, oh, look at them. They think they're all good running ahead of everybody else. Why don't they just run back here with the rest of us? Like, you didn't do that.
Nope.
But when it comes to leadership, when it comes to intellectual activities, when it comes to how people speak, like if someone uses terminology or concepts that are beyond you, you act like they're the one with the problem instead of you're the one who has room to grow.
That's exactly right. So I do have a question here for this particular number one that we're going through. Everyone can learn something from everyone. I mean, we can all learn something from everyone, even if it's to learn what not to do. We're still learning. What are some of the techniques as a leader you've adopted that keeps you from tuning out from what seems to be not interesting or not important?
Oh, that's all right. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
None of these questions are scripted ahead of time, folks.
Yeah.
Like, none of like, I'm not feeding VJ and saying, and then ask me this question.
Yeah.
Loft this softball up for me.
Right.
That ties in perfectly to the second thing that leaders shouldn't do, or
Okay.
that leaders don't do.
Okay.
So let's just jump into that. So here's second thing. First one was leaders don't say that's over my head out of a sense of pride. Second thing that leaders don't do. Leaders don't allow the other person to dominate the questions, not dominate the conversation. Leaders don't allow the other person to dominate the question. So let me give you an example that you were a part of. Is when we first had this idea for doing the podcast, there's another guy who lives in the Dayton area who has this phenomenally successful leadership podcast that it's so good. Like, what he does is so good. And so his name's Ryan Hawk, and it's the Learning Leader Show with Ryan Hawk.
It's fantastic too.
When we had this idea for doing the podcast, so here's what you should listen to Ryan Hawk's leadership podcast.
Absolutely.
And this one.
Yes.
Please not instead of this one.
Yeah.
But and this
Yeah.
one. And so we were like, man, we need to learn from him. So we sat down, we scheduled a lunch. We had there were 3 of us there who were ready to ask him questions. And he comes in and he spent the first 20 minutes asking us questions.
Yeah.
And it was like, we couldn't turn the conversation. Like, we were trying hard to get it like,
Yep.
no, we need to learn from you. Like, we've done nothing yet. And he was able to spend the first 20 minutes of the lunch asking us questions and learning from us. And I got to tell you, like, it's just amazing to me because sometimes I'll have pastors who want to sit down and they want to have lunch with me and they're like, hey, I need to learn some things. Hey, I've got some questions for you. And then sometimes I'll sit down with them and we'll be there for like an hour and they'll not ask a single question in the entire hour. They'll just tell me all their problems and all their struggles and tell me their story. And then I'm like, all right, let's go. And I think at the end, you learned nothing.
Yeah.
Like you came, you said you had something you wanted to learn, but I was the one who asked all the questions and you didn't have any questions prepared. And what I found is that when I am interacting with someone who's further down the line than me, they do a better job of dominating the questions than I do.
Yep.
And what they end up doing is like most people just try to dominate the conversation. No. Great leaders dominate the questions because they understand that if they're talking, they're not learning.
Oh man, so right. At the beginning of this year so far, I can see a lot of people that on Sundays taking more notes, and I think it's because they're starting to realize, and this is for me as well, right? The more that I take notes, the more things that I can that are happening for me outside of the learning. It's just putting me in a position to lead.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what you're saying with Ryan. First of all, that's exactly how that went down. Like 20 minutes and like we couldn't get a question in.
There were three of us and we still couldn't get a question in.
And it was just it was a moment in time where you realize this is how a guy got to where he is.
Yep.
And why he's able to do it so frequently and so powerfully every week.
Yeah.
Great guy. Do check out his podcast.
In addition to this one.
Yeah, Ryan, if you're listening to this, just put a link on your site for us. Hey, here's this is kind of not completely tied in with this, but a little bit. How do you? Because it's not easy to approach people. Some people it is not easy. Maybe not easy, but maybe it's weird. How do you normally approach? Because I know how you approached Ryan.
Yeah.
Right? Because we sought him out. We knew we wanted to learn from this guy. You specifically said, we're finding this guy. And that was at the 40 under 40 banquet.
I say the questions are prepared in advance. I actually had scripted out for VJ to work 40 under 40 in there. Thank you very much for working that in.
I didn't even do that on purpose. But how do you normally approach someone who is doing something great and get them to sit down with you?
Oh, it's not hard.
Yeah.
People are flattered to teach.
Yeah.
People are flattered that someone, and we always think that someone like, oh, they're so far, they're so big, they'll never do this. No, like everybody's struggling. Everybody's just trying to make it. Everybody's just trying to do something. And so when someone comes along and says, hey, I think what you're doing is great. Could I learn from you? Could I get an hour of your time? I've got some questions I want to ask you. Like when we come prepared and we know what someone's done, like we flatter them with that. And so people are delighted to teach others what I have found in my life.
Yeah.
And so I've asked many different times. I've asked pastors, I've asked leaders, I've asked leadership experts to say, hey, could I get an hour of your time for lunch? I'll buy you lunch. I've got questions I'd love to ask you. I've never been turned down.
That's a powerful, powerful trait to have that, though, to be able to know that you can learn from someone that's doing something that you haven't tried and you're willing to take the notes, you're willing to ask the questions. What's the third one you got for us?
Third one. Okay. So 1, leaders don't say that's over my head pridefully. 2, leaders don't allow the other person to dominate the questions. And number 3, leaders don't sit on what they know they should do. They don't sit on what they know they should do. This is not saying leaders don't receive counsel, that leaders don't receive advice, that leaders don't bounce ideas off other people. It is saying this when they have some sense of clarity on what needs to happen, they do it. Some sense of clarity, not total clarity, because we never get total clarity. If we had total clarity, we wouldn't need leaders. Everything would be obvious within that. And once they have that sense of clarity, they act. They are not paralyzed because they're a little unsure or they don't want to deal with the ramifications of the fallout. That is, now I want to say it like this. I'm not saying this is what everyone in a position of leadership does. I'm saying this is what leaders do. Like the people who lead. If you're leading, this is what you're doing. if you're not acting on what you believe should happen, you are immediately in that moment not a leader.
Yeah.
Within that. And I am never amazed. Sorry. I'm always amazed at people's ability to procrastinate on conversations they know they need to have or decisions they know they need to make because they know they're going to be difficult, they know they're going to be uncomfortable, or they know that people aren't going to like it. And if you talk to the majority of people, you go, hey, what's wrong with your organization, your team, your staff, your church, whatever it is, what's wrong? They know. And if you said, what do you think needs to happen? They know there's just some pain that happens within that. There's just, oh, they're not going to like me. I need to let this person go. This is going to be really hard. And it just baffles me how often people just sit on those things and do nothing about it because they don't like what's going to happen from it. I go, no, leaders don't do that. Leaders don't sit on what they know they should do. As soon as they know, as soon as they have some sense of clarity, they act on it and they move forward.
Yeah, that's just a reality. And the other reality part of that is a lot of times we don't approach the people that we need to approach in those situations because we think it's going to stop us or slow us down from the actual vision. Mm-hmm. And it's already doing that because you didn't. That's the ironic part of it.
Yeah.
Outside of the advice that you just gave, just do it, have the conversation, which is what leaders do. They have the conversation,
make the decision, move forward.
Yeah. How do you approach the leaders that you need to have those conversations with purpose and compassion?
Oh, I think that comes back to a larger issue of values.
Yeah.
And to go, that's a great point within there because leaders also value the individual.
Yeah.
And maybe that's different in my realm because most pastors don't struggle with having a heart for people.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Like, that's a really good thing.
Right.
And so if anything, I've found that pastors are far slower to pull the trigger on a decision or a conversation than the vast majority of the world. But I guess the thing within there that just always recenters me within those difficult pieces, if someone's unaligned with the organization, not only are they not doing what's best for the organization, but I'm not doing what's best for them.
Yes.
If someone isn't thriving in their job, in their role, like you talk about like having a difficult conversation with an employee, talk about having a difficult conversation with a volunteer, someone who doesn't get paid or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the reality at the end of the day, if they're not thriving in it, then they're probably not loving every bit of it. I have never met anyone who is so unaware of their own reality that they're struggling in their work, their job, their volunteering. They're struggling and they're loving every bit of it.
That's exactly right. Man, we've seen a couple comments, more than a couple of people that are volunteers in our church outside jobs that they hold. Mm-hmm. Where they're struggling with where they lead a department or they lead a group or they are head of a department at an organization, and they're like, man, I just don't know how to have this conversation, and you gotta have it, and don't put it off. Do not procrastinate.
Having the conversation or making the decision is not just what's best for you or the organization as a whole. It's actually what's best for them, not in the short run. Not in the moment. They're not going to love it.
No.
But in the long run, it is what's best for them. So if you value them, you'll do what's difficult now.
If you have the conversation with purpose and compassion and you stick to the vision and the values, you're only going to do what's best for them in the end. And that's really what you're striving for, is that people are learning and feeling loved and moving in the direction as whatever organization you're in.
Yeah, that's good.
That's awesome. So we went through don't do this.
Don't do this.
Don't do this. Why don't you recap it for us and let us know what someone should take away from this episode 13?
So to recap, our three things. Leaders don't say that's over my head out of a sense of pride. It's leaders don't allow the other person to dominate the questions, and leaders don't sit on what they know they should do. And what is at the heart of this is there's three key values that drive all of these. The first one is a value of humility. Humility. Because if I say that's over my head, it's because I'm arrogant and I'm not teachable, and I have to be humble in order to learn from those who are smarter than I am. When I allow the other person to dominate the questions, it means I'd rather talk about myself than learn. So leaders have a desire to learn. And for the last one, leaders have a bent towards action. They are people who naturally want to make progress. And if you have these three values, humility, a desire to learn, and a bent towards action, that'll guide your future decisions in a way that is best for everyone.
I love it. I hope everyone wrote those down. I certainly did. Humility, a desire to learn, bent towards action. Man, take those with you this week and into the future of 2020. One thing I do want to say, and I think you want to say as well before we end this, is, man, thank you guys so much for tuning in every week.
Oh, absolutely.
And sending the comments of how it's helping you in your day-to-day and your jobs and your life and your relationships and all the things that we're all trying to improve on. I mean, do you want to say thanks?
Well, it was cool. I mean, we've gotten a number of texts from different people, but one of the simplest ones, had a conversation with my wife the other day, and she just said, "Hey, listen to the podcast. I've been listening every week," which I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah. You hear me talk a lot, so I'll take that." She goes, "No, I appreciate how much you talk about our family and leading in our family." And we received a text the next day from a guy who we both admire who said, "Hey, this is helping me with my family." And man, that means so much to us. It really does. And that's what we want more than anything else. Not just that you're good at your job, but that everywhere you lead, it leads people towards hope.
That's exactly right. And so we just wanted to give that spotlight on you, the listeners that listen every week. And we would hope that you guys continue to listen. We hope that you subscribe, to share on social media, to subscribe to your very favorite platform to make sure that you're getting this every week. We just enjoy doing it, and we know that we're so thankful that you guys are there to be a part of it. So make sure you do that this week. We want you to have a great week, and we'll see you back next week for episode 14. Have a great day.